Welcome back to our next video in the Python beginner series. In the previous video we looked at objects or type of object. We also looked at a print function, and we also looked at variables. So as a quick recap, I remember saying that you could choose any variable of your choice, but just be mindful of the naming rules in Python. So a variable could be hello, how are you, right? That could be, you could also say that sum equals to, so sum is highlighted because sum is already a Python function, so it's not appropriate to use the word sum. So you could say total as your variable, which is equals to 6 plus 4, and you know that will give us 5, right? Evaluate to 10. Great. We also did talk about object types. We talk about integers. We also spoke about strings, which Python says str. We also spoke about booleans, which Python denotes as bool. We also spoke about the none type, which has only one value, none. And we also talked about the booleans, like I mentioned earlier, but I didn't say they are true and false, right? Basically, I didn't mention float, but we also have floating point objects, which Python denotes as float. Great. Alright, so we're going to talk about inputs and operators today. So whenever you use the print command, you're basically printing something to the screen from our end. So you could say, hello, are you having a good day? And we run this, and Python prints this to our screen. Right. So basically, all we could do is we could ask users of our program to input something, and we now proceed to work with whatever they keyed in. So let's track back, and let's say we want the name of a person. So what we basically have to do is that we want to say name is equals to, we assign name to the user input, right? And that we now put hello, please tell me your name. Alright, we have to close the commas. So when we run this, Python says hello, please tell me your name, and now you can put your name. Of course, nothing happens because we haven't continued our code. So what we could say is that we could then ask Python to print this and say that hello, I forgot my commas, so just say hello, let's just claim it, hello name. Then we can continue and ask the person, are you having a good day? So let's run this and see. Hello, please tell me your name. Python wait for me to input my name and say, let's say Sam. And hello Sam, are you having a good day? Basically, so that's it about user input, right? The next thing, so we can use this in so many ways to get people to input something, and then we now work with whatever they keyed in or the input they gave. We now proceed to work with it. So in this example, I asked them for their name, and now I use their name to print another statement. Alright, so now let's look at operators. So we know in basic mathematics we have certain operators. We have minus, addition, we have addition, subtraction, we have division, we have multiplication. Alright, so we're going to basically test this out. So you can use Python as a calculator, like I mentioned in the first video. You can ask Python to evaluate an expression and print the value. So we could say that Python should evaluate 5 plus 8. And Python tells us the answer is 13. You could ask Python to evaluate the expression of 10 minus 3. And Python will tell us that that's 7. You can ask Python to evaluate the expression of 12 divided by, let's say, 4. And Python will tell us 3. But you see, Python is now telling us 3.0. So Python 3, basically, when you give it 2 integers to divide, it gives you an answer in a float value. Okay, this is to make sure that it caters for if one of the value is a float. In earlier versions of Python, like Python 2, if you did this, it was going to give you an integer number and cut away every other decimal places. Okay, but as the program progresses, it gets better. They make changes, and that's one of the changes that have come with Python 3. If you are familiar with Python 2, you can remember that you need to make sure when you are doing these kinds of divisions, you cater for floating numbers. Alright, so the next thing we can do is to ask Python to evaluate the expression 10 times 5. And we know that gives us 50. Great. So that's the basic operators in Python. Alright. For the division, there's another kind of division. So let me quickly show you what I mean. I could tell Python to divide 12 by 4 like I did previously, but this time around I put 2 of the division symbols. Oops, sorry, I just closed the script and I have to open it again. Alright, so I could run this and Python gives me 3. You see, compared to, so I'm going to delete this so we can see the difference here. So basically, let me delete these two and let's compare the answers given here. So this, if you use a single division operator, you get a float value. If you use double, you are getting an int. So here is it. If I say 12 divided by 5, what would I get? I'm definitely going to get 1 point something. Sorry, I mean 2 point something, that's 2.4. But if I do this, I'm going to get 2. Sorry for that. I'm going to get 2. This is basically an integer division. So here's the difference. This is the proper mathematics division in Python. Once you just want to have an integer division, then you use this. There's another thing I forgot, which is the modulo operator. The modulo is basically the percentage symbol. And when we talk of modulo tells you that, okay, what's the remainder when you divide a particular number by another. So let's use our number again, 12 and 5. So if I say 12 modulo 5, basically I'm asking Python to tell me that if I divide 12 by 5, how many times is 5 going to divide 12 wholly? And what is going to remain? So definitely 5 can go into 12 two times, so I'm going to get 2 as an output. So I get 2. Alright, and there's remainder 2. Great, great, great. So I didn't talk about one operator, which is the modulo. And I didn't talk about one operator, which is the modulo. The modulo or the modulus is the percentage symbol. The modulus operator tells you the remainder after you have divided one number by another. So we're going to use 12 and 5 again. If I divide 12 by 5, the modulo, so we say 12 modulo 5. Alright, and let's see, Python tells me that the modulo is 2, which means that 5 will go into 12 two times, remainder 2. 5 times 2 gives you 10, remainder 2. Let's say it's 13, then you're going to get 3. If it's 14, then you're going to get 4. Alright, so basically that's the modulo. So let's quickly combine user input and the operators we have learned and come up with a small program. So let's say that we want somebody to input 2 numbers and ask us to perform an operation on those 2 numbers. So our first number we ask them is to say they should input, this has to be strings, right? Please enter first number. And we say that num2 please enter second number. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is that we want Python to now take the 2 numbers and add them. Okay, so we could say print num1 plus num2. Simple as that. But there's a problem with this, and I'm going to show you why there's a problem with this. It's going to allow us to enter our 2 numbers, num1 and num2, but it's not going to be able to print num1 and num2 as we are expecting. It will probably print something else than we are expecting. So let's see. Alright, so Python says we should enter the first number, and we'll say 4. It wants us to enter the second number, I'll say 7. And Python gives us 47. Great. So here is why you are unable to see that there's something wrong here. This is not the number 47. Alright. It's actually the string 4 and 7 that has been put together. So let me just change the operator to minus and let's see what happens. Please enter a first number. I said 4. Sorry. I said 4. And the second number is 7. So now we see that we are getting an error. Why is it that for the first instance, 4 and 7, we had 47? Even though we're asking the operator to add 4 and 7, that should give us 11. So we are taking it over again. 3, 2, 1, go. Three, two, taking it all over again. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so we're going to put together what we have learned, inputs and operators, and come up with a small program, let's say a calculator. Right, so let's say we want a user to enter 2 numbers, and we add those 2 numbers together. So we ask, assign the variable num1 to the user input, and we'll say that please enter first number, and we assign the variable num2 to another input. Great. Then we now ask Python to print num1 as num2. So here as it is, it's supposed to be this simple. However, there's an issue with what we have just done, even though it looks correct. We'll run it and I'll show you why I'm saying there's a problem. We haven't done the right thing. Okay, so here's our shell, which is now asking us to enter our first number. So we'll say 7. The second number will say 4. And the answer, Python evaluates num1 plus num2 and gives us 74. However, we are saying that we should add them. 7 plus 4 is supposed to be 11, not 74. What is happening is that Python is taking every user input as a string and joining them together. In other words, we are saying that Python is taking 7 as a string and 4 as a string and concatenating them so that we get 74. Because you cannot add strings together. But if we had specified that the inputs were to be integers, then Python would add them and give us 11. So in order not to have bugs like this in our program, you need to be very careful of the type of input you are asking people for. As it stands now, we only ask them for strings, and Python will work with it as such. The computer does not know what to do, we tell them what to do. So what we ask Python to do is what Python has done for us. So to resolve this, what we could do is to say that we could wrap this input, we could wrap the int function around the input, or we could come here. So let me just go ahead and explain it. So I could say that int in the same way I could say int, and I will run it, and Python will tell me that please enter first number. Let me resize this a little bit. And Python is telling me to enter first number, and I'll enter 7, and it tells me the second number, and now it gives me 11. The other way I could do this is to leave the input statement as they are. But when I'm asking Python to evaluate num1 plus num2, I'll say Python should evaluate the integer of num1 and the integer of num2. And this is also going to work in the same way. And I get 11. Right? So the takeaway point is that be careful the type of input you're asking the users for. If you're asking them for integers, be sure to convert their string inputs into integers before using them. Great. So let's do one more calculation. I'm going to use a different operator which I didn't even talk about. That's the exponent. So we say Python should remember I have to use the integer of number 1 exponent to the power of so then use two multiplication symbols. They represent exponent. Alright, so let's try this and see. We're going to use a simple number. We'll say 2 and we'll say 2. So 2 raised to the power 2 should be 4. Great. That's how Python works. The other way the print statement has become too complicated. So what we could do is to either put the integer here and here, and forget about it in our print statement. We'll say 3 and 2, that gives us 9. Or we could still take it off from here and introduce another variable here, which will say int 1 becomes the int of num1 and int 2 becomes equals to the int of num2. And that means I would have to change this to int 1 and int 2. And we're going to try with 3 and 2 again. We're still going to get 9. The problem, however, with this approach is that we are writing too many lines of code. And one key thing about Python is that Python programming stresses on simplicity. So we don't want to write a lot of code and comprehensiveness when we can actually write a simple code that does the same thing. Great. So I'd recommend that you either do it this way or so adding close this bracket. So you can say 3 and 2 and we get our 9 back. Very simple. So that'll be it for this video. But when you are done reviewing this video and learning the concepts in here, I want you to go into your shell and type this, import this, and it's going to give you an output that is called the Zen of Python. Basically, these are some of the things that we want our Python codes to look like. We want our codes to look beautiful. We want it to be explicit. Whatever we want to do should be explicit. It shouldn't be implied. And we want to have simple code instead of complex. And if it has to be complex, that's okay, but it shouldn't get complicated. Yes, flat is better than sparse is better than dense. So you see that I was writing a lot of code for simple work, and sparse is better than dense. But that's one of the things that the Zen of Python says: readability counts. So you can read through it and see what we expect our Python codes to look like. Alright, so I'll see you in the next video.